like everything else, the best time to start a portfolio is 10 years ago, and the second best time is today, right? Like, do that as a favor to your future self. And, it's a lot easier to document a project that's fresh in your mind and that's, current than it will be, 2, 3, 5 years from now when you're looking for your next role.
This is The Anonymous Marketer, a podcast where we tackle the biggest questions from the B2B marketing community. But instead of bringing on guests for a quick chat, every question comes from an anonymous source. These are the questions B2B marketers have, but are afraid to ask. Let's start the conversation.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of The Anonymous Marketer. Joining me today is Erik Martin, who is a marketing community and old church cookbook aficionado. That's our tagline for you, Erik. We're going to be having a grand plan today, digging into portfolios for marketers. We're going to talk through why you actually need one and how to build yours from scratch. So, Erik, thank you so much for making time for me today.
Of course, glad to be here.
Yes. Okay, so I know Erik is not a huge fan of job titles, which maybe we need to get into if we have a little bit of time for a tangent. And I had some great chat about them. But I just want to read off some of his career history so you know how valuable his advice is on this front, and why it's fantastic that he's here on the show today. So he has been a general manager at Reddit, a general manager US at Depop, the VP of member engagement at WeWork, VP of marketing at Airtime, lead entrepreneur at Nike, chief community officer at Teal. So Erik knows a thing or two about stuff, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know a lot, but still learning all the time. So
yeah. I think it's that approach. I love that approach that you have. I remember one time in a conversation with you about community, and you were like, I love community because it helps me connect with people that are smarter than me. And I just thought that was like somewhere with your kind of career history, you don't see a lot of that like approach in marketing.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a beautiful thing about community too, is you get to like pop into these, little niche subgroups where people are, geek out about, I don't know, all kinds of topics and subtopics. And I don't know, just that passion they have and the knowledge they have about their specific areas is contagious in a good way. Yeah. Helps me learn.
Speaking of weird niches, I really want to get in like a little question about your cookbook newsletter. Maybe we should just do that quickly now. Just get it out of the way because I know people have questions.
Yeah. So I started collecting old church and other sort of communal cookbooks, especially ones that are 100 years or older. And I don't know, they're just really fascinating sort of artifacts and sort of cultural history. I'm not a good cook. Like I can sort of fumble my way through a recipe if it's not too complicated, and I'm not religious or anything, but I just find them, I don't know, I find them so interesting because there's a long history of, churches, other civic groups creating these sort of cookbooks where they get recipes from everyone in their community to raise money for all kinds of different stuff. There's a long history of political cookbooks, people raising money for and awareness for their cause by sort of, collecting recipes from their community and then publishing those. And these old cookbooks, you can get them on eBay for $10, $20 maybe. So I probably have 50 or so of these. So I've recently created a newsletter to sort of make myself go through and actually try to cook some of these, hopefully with good results sometimes. But so I started a newsletter on Beehive called Covered Dish. And every 2 weeks I'll make a recipe from a cookbook and then also dive into the history and rabbit holes. And if I can, some of the people that, authored the recipe. This coming weekend, the next issue, I'm actually featuring a recipe this is the Ladies Auxiliary Cookbook of the Temple of the Hirsch, which is a synagogue in Seattle. And that book's from 1925. And I actually discovered the woman who authored the recipe that I made, which was an orange and date cake, is actually a character in a famous memoir, which I didn't know till after I already cooked and everything. So all kinds of fun rabbit holes.
Yeah, rabbit holes and connecting the dots are basically, I don't know, I think there are two of Erik's strong skills. But today we are talking about portfolios, which I feel like, I mean, if we're saying kind of there's nothing new under the sun in B2B marketing, I kind of feel like portfolios are something that I'm seeing a lot more about. Like, I mean, the job market is nuts at the moment. A lot of the applications when I was kind of on the hunt for a new role, a lot of the applications that I saw were kind of, they would like ask you for a portfolio link or, something or your website. And I was just like, what do I put in here? Anyway, we're going to get into all that. I have a great question that was submitted by an anonymous marketer, which is what the show is called. You see what we did there? So you can submit your own questions if you have them by going over to marketersindemand.com/anonymous and just filling everything out there. We're not going to ask you your name. We're not going to ask you specific company that you work for. It'll just kind of be some basic info. And then you can send in your very specific question. And then Erik, brilliant experts like Erik, not Erik specifically, because he's talking about this now. Where am I today? Where is my brain? Industry experts like Erik will answer your question for you and help you solve your problems. So that is the whole purpose of the show. The question that I have picked out today is as follows. Do I need to have a portfolio as a marketer? I'm looking for a new role at the moment, and I've noticed more and more of the jobs I'm applying for are asking for kind of website or portfolio link, mostly optional in brackets. I've never needed one previously, so have no clue where to start. This is super relevant for this conversation, but we always ask folks who submit questions to give us a little extra context about their company. So for what it's worth, this person works at an agency that has 11 to 50 employees, so kind of mid-sized, and 6 to 10 folks on their marketing team. Erik, I know you hosted a super well-attended event during our time together at Console about portfolios, which is why you were a no-brainer for this question. And obviously you've hired a lot of marketers in your time. Yeah, so I'm really excited to dig into this with you. I know when we talked about portfolios at Console, we were kind of talking specifically to community folks, although I think you could probably argue that there is a lot of crossover. Let's start by putting on a hiring manager hat. Is the portfolio absolutely necessary right now when you're reviewing candidates?
I would say for most roles, it's not absolutely necessary. It's optional. I think, plenty of people have gotten jobs without a portfolio and will continue to. But I think it's highly encouraged for a wide variety of reasons. One, depending on what sort of area of marketing you're in, a lot of the work we do is hard to communicate. It's hard to describe in a couple bullet points. It differs a lot. So if you can actually, get a hiring manager over to a portfolio site or spend a little time with a PDF of your portfolio, one that just gives you more surface area, more chances for something to resonate with the hiring manager or recruiter that's doing the screens or whatever. And it's just a better sort of canvas to show what you can do. Especially if, let's say you worked on something with a team and, it's not really, fair or accurate on your resume to kind of list the results of the project in the bullet points under your experience. You could still showcase that project on your portfolio and talk about the role you played as part of a larger team, which, most of the work we do is as a team anyway. So I just think it gives you more options to showcase what you can do. Plus, hiring managers, recruiters are humans like the rest of us, and they are influenced by the evidence they see. So, visual evidence of something you've done carries weight. Numbers carry weight. That's why, always encourage people on their resume to put, if you, increased leads or saved the company money or grew the newsletter from X to Y, I like to always include those numbers just because even if people are scanning it, those numbers have a lot of weight in our human brains.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking about my kind of recent stint in the job market and where I ended up. I didn't really have a portfolio to speak of. I think it's a lot more cut and dry for someone in my position as a writer because these are examples of my work. This is how they looked, especially I worked at a magazine for a long time. So I have kind of actual PDFs, layouts and things that look great in a portfolio and a designer, perhaps or like an illustrator or someone in a more kind of visual space would, it's cut and dry. They know exactly what goes in the portfolio. I'm going off on a tangent. What I did want to say was that I had like a Dropbox folder and like a couple of articles that when I went through them, that was so dated because obviously I'd been at my previous role for a while. And it feels clunky. I was like, do I put them in separate folders? Like, should this be on a Notion page? Do I need to spin up an entire website? I've seen some copywriters that have the most beautiful websites. And I'm like, I don't have those skills. Is my Dropbox folder gonna resonate? And I did eventually apply. I think I eventually moved over to Google Drive, just because that's a little bit easier to share. And like, I was successful in looking for a new role. And when I was interviewing for the role, some folks did kind of call out stuff that I put in there. So I know like a thorough hiring manager is going to go through that, and it is going to make you stand out in an application process. What would you advise, Erik, for folks? Just, I think people are looking at hundreds of applications these days, and most of those people are probably submitting some form of portfolio. How can you kind of make it as frictionless as possible for the hiring manager to see? I mean, not send them 3,000 Dropbox folders like I did, but
Yeah, I would say, when in your cover letter, in your, message that you're sending, if you have interactions with the hiring manager or recruiter, call out specific things that are in your portfolio. If you can send a direct link, great. If it's in a Google slide or it's in Notion, you can usually send a direct link to a specific section. Or even if you're just sending a whatever PDF, just say, hey, page 5, you'll see this project I worked on that's very similar to the type of work you're looking for this role. And, there's no guarantee they'll look at it, but I think the chances are pretty good. And I just think make it as easy for them as possible, especially, one of the nice things about portfolios versus the limited sort of real estate on a resume or CV is you can sort of explain the context. You can say, hey, the company, its marketing had been in this direction before I started on this project. And here's sort of the before. Here's what it looked like before I used my skills and experience. And here's what it looked like afterwards. Not literally visually what it looked like, but like here's sort of the before and after, right? The transformation that I was able to bring as a marketer. And especially if the hiring manager is not familiar with your company and your industry, which a lot of us, that'll be the case. You can really share like, what's important to know about that particular company and the particular challenge that you were solving as a marketer.
yeah. And for folks who may not specifically be in like a vision role, like I mentioned in my weird tangent earlier, or like copywriters, like I'm thinking like field marketers and growth marketers, like how do you represent that visually? I mean, you mentioned numbers. What would you recommend including in your portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, even if your sort of visual representation isn't something that you literally touched or influenced as a marketer, I think it's still important to use that as another way to give context. So like here is the, let's say you were, I don't know, doing growth marketing and looking at, email lifecycle campaign. You can still include visuals from that email campaign just to kind of give more context and to make it more interesting for the reader. I mean, ultimately as marketers, we should be good at sort of, capturing people's interest and, storytelling and, the visual elements are just another way to do that. So it doesn't have to be much. It could be a headline. It could be a screenshot. It could even be, one of my favorite portfolios was about someone who worked in the newsroom and they were moving over into sort of customer experience. And they said, one of the slides in their portfolio was like, here's 5 reasons why, people who've worked in the newsroom make amazing customer experience professionals. And it was just sort of like a 5 points, right? But it was very, it was, very sort of visual in the slide, but there was no images or anything, but it just was interesting. I was like, okay, I'm going to read all 5 of these. And they make good points. So use your creativity as a marketer to tell the story of your work and what you bring to the table.
And to your point about, that listicle approach, I think is great because I actually did it in my recent kind of job hunt. I put together that was actually in my cover letter, but I wish I had like just kind of had the wherewithal to like link to specific projects. So what I'd actually done is I took like kind of key points from the job description that I could kind of speak to and be like, okay, you're looking for skill X. And that was like my number 1, number 2. And then in a very short paragraph underneath, I was like, this is why I'm great at this. I've done X, Y, Z. And if you were to go a step further and to connect that to like a portfolio piece or like a PDF or wherever your content or work lives. I think that would be amazing. Even if like a job isn't kind of asking for, even if there's no space to send in your portfolio, that can be a great approach as well. Not a listicle.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even
Then list
other
it.
approaches I've seen is, someone will say, here's a project I'm really proud of. And they'll
Yeah.
show sort of the end result. Like maybe it's an article about the company, maybe it's an award the company gave or a big event the company, put on. And so showing a, image from the conference that the company, the big conference they put on, if you're a, a marketer, you can sort of include that in your portfolio and say, hey, I helped to make this thing a big success.
Yeah.
You're not taking credit for, the event production or all the other moving parts, but you're saying this was a project I worked on and I'm really proud of the end result. And here's what I contributed. And I think portfolios are,
Yeah.
much, much easier to do that than in a resume that someone's going to look at for, 6 seconds.
Exactly. And resumes are so boring. I I was remembering when I was hiring for a content role, I think it must have been about 2 or 3 years ago now. We had a couple of hundred applications. And I mean, look, I'm not advocating for like putting together the flashiest resume possible on Canva, but it can be really, really tedious when you're looking through. And people in roles now, they're looking at hundreds, sometimes thousands of applications for each job, thousands of resumes, all, beautifully set in Microsoft Word or whatever your preference is. And that just is a visual assault. That if you can kind of make it a little bit more interesting for a hiring manager, whether that's through a listicle or
Yeah.
a really nice visual portfolio, I think that's a great shout.
Absolutely. And I think too, the tools you use can help tell the story as well.
Yes.
Something I've noticed, if you're transitioning from higher education or the nonprofit world or healthcare into a tech role at a startup, it often those hiring managers and recruiters are going to be skeptical that you are sort of scrappy and tech savvy enough for the role. So by having your portfolio in, a public Notion link or even a carousel in LinkedIn or something like that can help tell the story of like, yes, I use these same tools that you all use. So, sometimes it'll say even in the job description what tools one is expected to
Yeah.
use. Make your resume, make your portfolio in one of those. Cause again, that's just reinforcing, hey, I can do this job, especially if you're transitioning from a different industry, that helps build confidence.
I have such a great example of this from a former colleague who was, I think they were, I was going to say interviewing for a job, auditioning for a job at a company that basically they allow you to build custom apps. And she built out a portfolio in this app. She's super technically minded, but it was useful. And I think she got really far in the process. I'm not actually sure what happened there. But that's a great example. That's such a great point. I mean, it is a bit of work, right? But if there's a job that you really, really want, and this is something that I also kind of found is really valuable recently, is rather than kind of applying for every possible job that you can find, that remotely kind of ticks your skill set and experience, like go deep. So kind of be really selective about the jobs that you apply for. I mean, look, this is what I found success with. I'm sure a lot of other people have had success casting a wide net. But I think, if you just really spend time and effort on a specific application, the results will speak for themselves. I think I was I was applying for like 300 jobs a month out of sales. Like when you just like, you get into that like easy apply phase, right? Where you're just like click, 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 and you've got your cover letter, you've got everything's like the same, and you can kind of tweak it a little bit, but basically you've got your little folder of things that you apply with. And I had no luck with that. But when I started kind of tailoring my portfolio and my cover letters and my CV to like the specific role, the people that I would be talking to, like that was when I really started kind of getting my resume in front of the right people. So yeah,
Yeah. I think that
I
makes a lot of sense. And yeah,
yeah.
is true from what I've seen as well.
For people that are not, I keep bringing this back to like job searching and job hunts, but what
Right.
is the value of having a portfolio for someone who is not maybe looking for a new role right now?
Yeah. I think, like everything else, the best time to start a portfolio is 10 years ago. And the second best time is today, right? Like so whatever that phrase is. But I think it's helpful, even if you love your job and you're not planning on looking at it anytime soon. One, because especially these days, you never know. You never know when, the company's going to have layoffs or who knows,
Yeah.
and
Oh
you're
my
going to have to
gosh.
be looking. But, so do that as a favor to your future self. And, it's a lot easier to document a project that's fresh in your mind and that's, current than it will be, 2, 3, 5 years from now when you're looking for your next role. Another reason is it's really good. It's just a really good practice to, to sort of document your wins, your the failures too, but for a portfolio, documenting the wins. Hey, this is what we accomplished. This is, the numbers, the metrics that were important. This is some of the sort of like artifacts, the screenshots, the images, the notes from customers that loved it, the responses, whatever is relevant. That'll be useful when you, talk to your boss about a promotion or just
Yes.
in feeling accomplishment. I think so much of what we do as, sort of knowledge workers that are in front of a laptop all day is very
Knowledge
ephemeral
worker.
and abstract. And, it's not like when our ancestors were, I don't know, farming sweet potatoes or lemons or whatever. And at the end of the day, they could say, hey, this is how many, how much produce I harvested, or this is, the literal fruits of my labor. And
What
I
a
think just
portfolio
being
that
able
would have
to
been.
look and see what you've done is satisfying. It's reassuring. It helps when you have those moments of imposter syndrome. And I think
Yes.
too, it helps build good muscles. It helps build your muscles of storytelling and analysis. It helps you decide, you know, okay, this project worked, but why? What was it that I did that made the impact? Maybe it was a small thing. Maybe it was a big thing. Maybe it was a choice, multiple steps and sort of like up the river that ended up, leading to a good result. And I think those type of skills are just good to develop in general, and especially important as you sort of move into more strategic, management or sort of higher responsibility roles. And that'll be useful just for your own work and development of your skills, but also down the road when you're, looking to apply for a new role or get a promotion or whatever the case is.
Yeah. I hadn't even considered getting a promotion. I think that would be such a powerful tool if you were to kind of be making your own case. And I love what you said about using it as a tool for self-reflection, because that's the thing that I find really difficult to do. It's really difficult to force that to, like, when you're a really busy knowledge worker, sitting down and finding the time to like take a step back and look at the big picture. These are the projects. This is what I worked on. This is what went really well. And maybe if you're kind of looking at it through the lens of creating a portfolio, there is like an end goal and something tangible that you will be extracting from that. I don't know, maybe a useful forcing function,
So
instance of
yeah.
perfection. Yeah. Yeah. Eric, what is in your portfolio?
So I actually we had a sort of a group accountability project recently, past few months, and I used that time to create a sort of portfolio website, which I think there's also there's also a spectrum. You could have a portfolio that's in a PDF or, password
Yeah.
protected something or other that you're just sending to, hiring managers and jobs. Or all the way at the other end, you could have something that's online and indexable by search engines, and you include it in your email signature and stuff. And so I chose something more of that route. And, so my website, hueypriest.com, is just sort of like my sort of personal site. It has links to some of my work. It'll, when this podcast goes up, I'll put a link to that. And so it's sort of a portfolio, but it's also sort of like, I don't know, where people can learn more about me, and also
Mm.
just for myself, a place I document like, oh, these are, I don't know, social media posts I made that I was proud of or that I enjoyed.
There's
So I
some
think,
great blog posts that you should include
yeah,
on there.
yeah.
Yeah. That we worked on
So
together. Just putting it out
there's
there.
that. I think some of those are in there, but yeah, there's
Oh, I
that
haven't
too.
looked. I'm embarrassed.
It's not just a portfolio, but it's just sort of a collection of some work and links. And so I think
Yeah.
that, has additional uses as well. If you're looking to get more speaking engagements or more writing opportunities, or be consider, if you want recruiters reaching out to you in the future, having those sort of fishing lines of work and links and
Mm.
documentation of your experience out there can definitely help.
Yeah. Okay. I need to, my Google Drive folder is dead and I need to build a website. For someone who has little to no, more on the side of no dev skills,
Yeah.
what would you recommend? Like, where can I start? Where should I go to build something like that for myself?
Yeah. I mean, I think public Notion page is a good place to start. I think, a public Canva page, both of those, a public Wix, Squarespace, any of these sort of, easy to use website builder or template tools, including Notion and Canva, they have templates for this type of thing, a
Yeah.
portfolio or a personal website, and can make it pretty easy. But I've also seen people, share a public Google Doc link or a Google Slides link.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, it doesn't, I don't think, unless you're in a visual design part of the industry, I wouldn't worry too much about what it looks like. You can always improve it. I use beacons.ai, which is sort of like a link in bio
Okay.
type thing, but it's also a great way to make a very simple sort of 1-page or 2-page site. So things like that can work as well, but it's really, there's a lot of tools out there, and if whatever tool you have an account on and you're using, search for a template and you can probably find some pretty good examples.
I would be remiss if I didn't flag that I have a great link in bio tool. Well, Livefast has a great link in bio tool that I've got. It's called Start Page, and it's very basic. So I don't think like it's not as much a portfolio based. So I've got something like that. It's in my LinkedIn profile and bio, but and like Instagram bio and TikTok and all of the rest of it. But I like what you mentioned about stuff being indexable and people being able to find you on search. I think that's just another. I know a lot of people who listen to this show are super interested in the idea of building a personal brand. And I think just having a face like that, like an owned platform, and we talk about this a lot. I know Nick Bennett, who previously hosted the show, is talking about that a lot on LinkedIn if you want to go learn more. But yeah, I think that is the next frontier for me. That is something that I'm going to be doing. Erik, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me today. I really appreciate it. I always ask my guests at the end of the show if there's anything they'd like to add or something that they feel like we've missed in our discussion. So is there anything that you think is really important to end the show with?
Yeah. One question I've gotten a lot in talking with people about portfolios and helping people is, okay, well, what do I do if I only have, a little bit of experience? What if I don't have a lot of projects to talk about? And, I think there are definitely some things you can do. One is you can sort of like use that as an excuse to, create your own projects, to, do something sort of on your own as a side project, or volunteer to help a new startup or a cause you care about. But if you, in addition to that, you can also say, hey, here's my, 3 of my favorite email newsletters or 3 of my favorite podcasts. And here's why I think they're pretty good. Or, whatever it is you're interested in. Here's 5 recent movie campaigns. I'm looking at their posters. I'm looking at their online ads. I'm looking at their, the way they marketed. And here's what I think they did really well and where what they did doesn't make sense to me. Just sharing your critique and opinion. Again, it helps to show a potential hiring manager, you have, sort of strategic insights, and you have taste, and you have opinions, but it also, again, helps to build those muscles. So, you can also create things that are a resource. Hey, use your own problems. Here, I'm looking to build a marketing portfolio for people who are early career. Here's, a post I'm making on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. Here's 10 portfolios I found from marketers who are earlier in their career that I think are great examples. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways to showcase your skills that don't involve a project you were paid to work on. And so I think, again, you're probably creative and good at sort of storytelling if you're in marketing. So use your talents and be creative there to showcase what you can bring to your next employer.
I loved what you mentioned about kind of kickstarting your own projects and creating your own content effectively. And I think you've just kind of made a connection for me in terms of a lot of people like putting out content on LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or your chosen platform, right? In service of building your personal brand. And that can always be, these 2 things can be mutually feed into each other. You can repurpose this content for your portfolio. Your portfolio content can be turned into, hey, here's this project I worked on 5 years ago, and this is why it was super successful, or this is why it absolutely tanked, and here are the reasons, and I think those two things can, you can work smarter, not harder with the stuff you're creating. And just, yeah, I love that, Erik. Thank you. That is all we have time for. We are running up against time here, but I just want to say thank you for putting up with my awkwardness and sharing your amazing wisdom. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time that we have you on the podcast. If you want more of Erik, I highly recommend you find him on LinkedIn and on Twitter. On X, he is Huey Priest. And his amazing podcast, Nothing New Under the Sun, is absolutely worth checking out. So mostly because his voice is incredibly soothing and you will learn so much. And yeah, those are all the things. We'll include Erik's links in the show notes. And as always, if you have your questions that you would like to submit for the show, the link is marketersindemand.com/anonymous. And that is the end.
Thank you so much. Glad to chat. I hope it's not the last time.
Thanks for checking out this episode of The Anonymous Marketer. This show is part of Marketers in Demand, a network of podcasts featuring the world's leading B2B marketers. Unlock your full potential as a B2B marketer by going to marketersindemand.com.